Welcome to another episode of the MemcycoFM show. Today we're embarking on a deep dive into a cybersecurity challenge that operates subtly, often unseen, yet has profound implications for every online interaction: DNS cache poisoning prevention. It's a threat that can silently redirect you to malicious websites. And while security professionals universally acknowledge its danger, truly guarding against it effectively has historically been, well, easier said than done.
That's a crucial point, and what's particularly insightful here is that despite the widespread adoption of robust network layer defenses like DNSSEC, these sophisticated attacks, they just continue to succeed. They are a direct pipeline to some of the most damaging cyber outcomes we see today, from widespread credential harvesting to the alarming bypass of multi-factor authentication, ultimately leading to full-scale account takeover. Our deep dive today is really all about dissecting this problem, understanding precisely where those traditional defenses reach their limits, and critically what advanced layers of protection are now emerging to truly secure users right at the point of interaction.
Okay, so let's unpack this. For anyone who might be hearing the phrase, maybe for the first time, what exactly is DNS poisoning at its core? And, why is it so effective?
Right. So at its most fundamental level, DNS poisoning, sometimes called DNS spoofing or DNS cache poisoning, it's an attack where forged, illegitimate DNS responses are injected directly into a DNS resolver's cache. Think of a DNS resolver as like the internet's phone book. When you type a website address, your computer asks this phone book for the corresponding IP address. DNS poisoning is like someone slipping a fake malicious entry into that phone book, telling it that, say, your bank's website actually lives at a different attacker-controlled address.
Okay. The phone book analogy helps.
Exactly. And the effect is incredibly deceptive, which is why it's so potent. When you, as a user, attempt to visit a legitimate domain, maybe your online bank, like I said, or your favorite shopping site, the poison cache gives your browser the incorrect malicious IP address. So your browser then unknowingly directs you not to the real site, but to a meticulously crafted attacker-controlled server. And these fake sites are often pixel-perfect replicas of the legitimate ones. They're designed to trick you into believing you're on the real domain, making you comfortable entering sensitive data like logins, personal info, credit card.
Because it looks right.
It looks completely right. That visual fidelity is key to why they bypass human suspicion so well.
And that's precisely where its insidious nature lies, isn't it? It's not like you get a big warning sign or a broken page. It's this silent, seamless redirection. You're often seeing the correct URL in your address bar, sometimes even with a padlock icon, which we're all taught means secure. Yet despite all these cues suggesting safety, you've actually landed on a phishing clone site. It's a really sophisticated form of digital impersonation, exploiting that basic trust we have in how the internet works. Could you maybe walk us through a typical scenario, step by step, just to really illustrate how an attack like this unfolds, particularly without the kind of modern browser layer defenses we're going to talk about later?
Absolutely. Let's paint that picture. It usually starts with an attacker finding a vulnerable DNS resolver somewhere out there on the internet. This could be run by an ISP, maybe a company's network, or even a public DNS service that hasn't been properly secured or patched. Once they find a weak spot,
they pounce.
Exactly. They start sending forged, fake DNS responses to that vulnerable resolver. Now, crucially, they do this incredibly fast. The goal is to deliver their malicious response before the real, legitimate DNS server can get its answer back to the resolver.
So it's a race.
It's absolutely a race. And because the attacker's fake response gets there first, the vulnerable resolver just accepts it and caches it. It stores this incorrect IP address, effectively corrupting its phone book entry for that legitimate domain. So now the trap is set. When you, the user, later try to go to that legitimate site, your browser asks the now poisoned resolver for the address. The resolver, completely unaware it's compromised, faithfully gives your browser the wrong malicious IP address. And your browser, again, without any warning, sends you straight to the attacker's spoofed site. This whole sequence, it can happen in just seconds, from you typing the URL to the fake page loading.
Wow.
And that speed is critical, because without real-time, active visibility at the browser layer right at that moment you land on the page, most traditional network defenses just miss it completely. It highlights a huge blind spot.
A critical blind spot indeed. And it makes me wonder, if basic cache poisoning is this effective, are there other variations? Other ways attackers are using this fundamental DNS trick?
That's a perceptive question, yeah. While cache poisoning injecting those fake entries is probably the most common one we talk about, it's really part of a bigger family of DNS manipulation attacks. Others include things like DNS hijacking. This is a bit different. It's less about poisoning a temporary cache and more about changing the actual DNS settings themselves. An attacker might, say, gain control of a domain's registration and change its authoritative name servers. Or they might compromise an ISP's main DNS server, or even just your home router, to redirect traffic for whole domains or networks.
So a more fundamental compromise.
Exactly, higher up the chain, often. The effect is similar redirection, but the point of compromise is different. And then there's also ARP spoofing. Now, this operates much more locally, like within your office network or maybe even public Wi-Fi. ARP, that's the Address Resolution Protocol, it maps IP addresses to the physical MAC addresses of devices on a local network. With ARP spoofing, an attacker tricks devices on that local network into thinking their malicious computer has the MAC address of something trusted, like the network gateway or router. This lets them intercept or redirect traffic, including your DNS requests, maybe sending you to fake sites that way. So you see, while the technical methods vary, cache poisoning, hijacking, ARP spoofing, the end goal is usually the same. Subtly, almost invisibly, reroute users to spoofed websites to steal their data. They all exploit our trust in the DNS system.
Right. So we've established these silent redirections are happening, one way or another. How does that initial subtle trick then blow up into the really big problems, like sophisticated phishing attacks and even full account takeover? Especially when the user's sitting there thinking they're on the real site.
Well, that redirection, that's just the first domino, isn't it? Once you, the user, land on that carefully faked site, you're effectively in the attacker's territory. You're acting under the assumption everything's legitimate, so you proceed as normal, you try to log in, maybe fill out a form, perhaps make a purchase.
Yeah, you trust the site.
You trust the site. And that's where the downstream consequences kick in, hard. As you unknowingly type your username, your password, any sensitive details into what looks like a normal form, the attackers who control that fake page are harvesting it instantly, in real time. This allows for immediate account takeover, often before you even suspect anything is wrong.
Wow, immediate.
Yes. And what's particularly alarming and a major vulnerability is how this whole attack chain can just bypass multi-factor authentication, MFA.
Really? How?
Yeah.
I thought MFA was supposed to stop this kind of thing.
It's designed to, but attackers use what we call man-in-the-middle, or MIT-MEM tactics here. They sit between you and the real site, so they intercept your login attempt on the fake site. They then pass your username and password to the real site. The real site then asks for the MFA code. The attacker forwards that MFA prompt back to you on the fake site. You enter the code,
Which the attacker captures.
Exactly. They capture the code you provide and then instantly replay that exact same code to the actual legitimate site to complete the login.
And they're in, just like that.
They're in. It happens in seconds, completely sidestepping the MFA protection that so many people and organizations rely on. And this really underscores that critical gap in traditional security we mentioned. This whole sequence bypasses many common defenses. Email filters looking for bad links, URL reputation scanners, even those network-layer DNS protections. Because those defenses mostly work before you click or before you land on the page. They check the link, the domain reputation, the DNS resolution itself. They don't really have visibility into what happens after you've landed on that malicious site and start interacting with the fake interface. The real danger lies in that digital impersonation happening right there in your browser.
That's a truly sobering thought. It makes the threat feel much more immediate. To really grasp the urgency here, what do the latest numbers tell us? What's the scale of this DNS threat landscape looking like, say, heading into 2025?
Yeah, the statistics are, well, they're quite stark. They really show how mainstream these attacks have become. According to Heimdall Security's 2025 threat report, a staggering 87% of organizations reported experiencing at least one DNS attack in the past year.
87%. That's almost everyone.
It's nearly 9 out of 10 businesses. It clearly indicates this isn't some niche, isolated threat anymore. It's pervasive. And the financial hit is just as severe. The same report pegs the average cost per DNS-related attack at around $950,000.
Wow. Nearly $1 million per attack.
And you have to remember, that's not just the cost of cleaning up the technical mess. That includes lost productivity, data breach notification costs, potential regulatory fines, legal fees, and of course, significant damage to reputation. It's a huge financial blow. And maybe the most revealing statistic, connecting back to what we were just discussing, 1 in 3 phishing campaigns now involve some form of DNS manipulation.
1 in 3.
Yes. It means attackers are increasingly choosing to subvert the DNS system itself to make their phishing attacks work, rather than just relying on, obviously, fake email links or attachments. It shows a definite shift towards more sophisticated methods that are harder to spot with traditional tools.
So putting that all together, DNS-based phishing isn't some obscure technique anymore. It's mainstream, it's highly effective, it's incredibly costly, and it's growing fast. It really sounds like it's not a question of if an organization will face this, but more like when.
Precisely. And this brings us to a really fundamental question. Given this scale, the sophistication, why do our traditional DNS poisoning protections, even the good ones, often fall short? We're talking about established tools and practices here. Things like DNSSEC for verifying responses, DNS over HTTPS or DOT for encrypting queries, dedicated DNS firewalls, keeping TTL values short, doing regular DNS hygiene audits.
Well, important stuff, right?
Absolutely critical stuff. They are vital for preventing many initial redirection attempts or for blocking access to domains already known to be malicious, but they simply cannot detect or prevent all attacks, especially not those involving brand new, rapidly changing what we call polymorphic or highly sophisticated phishing sites that only appear after that initial redirection has already happened.
Okay, so why? What's the inherent limitation?
The fundamental reason they fall short is really architectural. They operate mainly at the network or infrastructure layer. Their job is to protect the pipes, the internet's routing and name resolution system, ensuring legitimate traffic gets pointed towards legitimate servers. So DNSSEC, for instance, verifies the authenticity of DNS responses, making it harder for attackers to inject fakes. Great. But once that DNS resolution is complete, and your browser has been given an IP address, whether it's the right one or a malicious one, these network layer tools effectively step back. They leave the user, the customer, vulnerable downstream. That is, after they've already been redirected and have landed on the malicious site, ready to interact, totally unaware they're in a trap. It's not just a gap in features, it's about where these tools fundamentally operate, focused on the network path, not the endpoint's interaction with the resulting web page.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, these robust network defenses are fantastic at the gateway, acting like a strong outer wall. But what happens if an attacker manages to slip through that wall, even just for a moment? What protects the user inside?
That's exactly the crux of the problem. Traditional DNS layer tools are, as you said, exceptional at trying to prevent that initial redirection. They're the first line, the secure gate at the city entrance. But once that redirection does succeed, once a user's browser has been silently steered onto hostile digital ground, those network-level tools aren't actively protecting the user's subsequent interactions on that malicious page.
Okay.
This is where the concept of a fortification layer becomes so important. A solution like, say, MemcyCo doesn't try to replace those vital upstream DNS defenses. It can't. Instead, it complements them. It extends real-time monitoring and active protection downstream, past the point of redirection, focusing precisely on that critical moment when the user interacts with the web page itself. Think of it like adding an intelligent, vigilant security system inside the city, right at the door of every single house. It uses what are called nano defenders.
Nano defenders.
Yeah, essentially lightweight, dynamic bits of code that operate directly within the browser environment. They're designed specifically to detect these sophisticated phishing sites as they load after redirection has already happened, and then intervene immediately in real time.
That distinction is incredibly important. So once a user has unfortunately landed on that malicious site, what does this real-time browser layer protection actually do? How does it shield the user at that most vulnerable point?
Right, it becomes an active intelligence shield, turning the tables on the attacker right where the user is most exposed. First, it provides browser-level phishing detection. This is vital because it can identify and flag spoofed sites the moment they load in the browser. Critically, it can do this even if the site is brand new, literally seconds old, and not yet listed in any threat database. It's looking for the subtle signs of impersonation in the code and structure, not just relying on a blacklist.
Okay, that makes sense. What else?
Then there's something called decoy credential injection. This is where it gets really clever, I think. If you, the user, start typing your login details into what you think is a real form, but it's actually fake. This technology intercepts that input before it leaves your browser and replaces your actual username and password with realistic-looking but totally fake decoy credentials.
So the attacker gets useless data.
Exactly. It renders the stolen information completely useless, stopping account takeover cold. But it's more than just neutralization. It also turns the attacker's successful phish into an intelligence source for the defending organization. They can see the attack happening, trace it back, understand the campaign, all without any real user data being compromised.
That's brilliant. Defusing the bomb and tagging the bomber.
Kind of, yeah. And beyond that, these solutions typically provide immediate red alerts and site markers. These are clear, visible warnings that pop up right in the user's browser, telling them unequivocally, hey, this page is unverified or dangerous, stop.
A direct warning to the user.
A direct warning. Then there's suspicious device blocking. This uses intelligence, maybe from those decoy credentials or other signals, to identify and block login attempts coming from unfamiliar devices that might be trying to use stolen data. Another layer against ATO. And some advanced platforms can even run deception campaigns on a broader scale, actively feeding attackers large volumes of fake data to disrupt their operations and waste their resources.
It's that real-time aspect again, and the focus squarely on the moment of user interaction that seems to really set this apart. It feels like it's catching the threat exactly where those upstream tools, effective as they are in their own domain, might inherently miss it, protecting the user when they're most vulnerable.
Precisely. And to really underscore the ultimate benefit here, to truly close that gap we've been talking about, while a browser layer solution won't stop the DNS poisoning itself, that's still an infrastructure or network issue upstream, it absolutely stops the phishing attack and the resulting damage caused by that digital impersonation after the redirection has occurred. It prevents the attack from achieving its real objective, stealing data or taking over accounts.
And the benefits for the organization using this?
Oh, they're profound. It unlocks this unprecedented real-time visibility into attacks that were previously very hard to detect. Security teams can finally see who the attackers are targeting, how they're operating, and even identify individual victims almost instantly. You can pinpoint the exact user who got redirected by a DNS poisoning attack and intervene quickly. You can deploy those marked decoy credentials we talked about, which not only neutralize the stolen data, but also block subsequent unauthorized access attempts. And, crucially, by analyzing behavioral signals and decoy interactions, it helps identify accounts that are likely being targeted for takeover, allowing for preemptive action before disaster strikes. It provides actionable intelligence that was simply out of reach before.
This deep dive has really shown a light on something critical. While network defenses are absolutely essential, that first line is vital. The real battle, the user's last line of defense, often happens after they've been redirected. A browser-level solution, like the kind we've discussed, adds that crucial, maybe long overdue layer of fortification, right where the user actually interacts with the potentially malicious site. It seems to close a really significant security gap. It leaves me with a thought. In a world where cyber threats constantly evolve, often cleverly leveraging the very infrastructure we depend on, how can we ensure our defenses aren't just a perimeter fortress, but also act like a vigilant sentinel right there at the front door, protecting those most vulnerable moments of human-digital interaction? If you're curious to see how this crucial layer of protection works in action, we definitely recommend exploring further. To see the MemcycoFM solution for yourself, you can book a product tour and discover how to add that essential fortification layer your DNS poisoning defenses might currently be missing.